First Point was established in 2001, so celebrating our 25th anniversary next year. Can you give the audience on the webinar a bit of an overview on First Point, our background, how many athletes we work with in a year, and also the fact that we're founded by a former student athlete ourselves, and quite a lot of our colleagues obviously come from that background. If you can explain a little bit about the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So our company was founded by Andrew Keane in 2001. Andrew was on a similar pathway to me, and we actually knew each other when we were younger. But Andrew had an opportunity to go out to the University of Cincinnati, where he had 4 fantastic years. He's in the Hall of Fame there, and he's also an All-American, which is a very, very high accolade for any athlete in the US. When Andrew came back to the UK, his motivation was to try and help the next generation to experience something that he had, something that had been life-changing for him, and that led him to set the company up. So we're very much founded by athletes for athletes here at First Point. So when you look across our business, most of our staff are either former college athletes or college coaches or former professional athletes like myself. So we talk about athlete-driven, expert-led here at First Point. So it's a complicated process to navigate. So it's important that you've got experience and you've got a network of people who can support you. When you're looking to take on this challenge. So as you say, Ross, established in 2001, we have placed over 40,000 student athletes into around 2,000 universities and colleges that we actively work with. We do work in around 16 different sports. I know we're here to talk about soccer today, but we do provide support to athletes across a range of sports. And something that's very important is that First Point is one of the few agencies working internationally who are NCAA certified. The NCAA are the kind of premier governing body of college sport, and we are certified to the very highest level to make sure that we are providing a very high level of support, that high touch placement support, to ensure our athletes, wherever they're based in the world, are able to maximise their recruitment opportunities, finding those best fit institutions. So very experienced, athlete-driven, expert-led. We've been here a long time. We've supported lots of athletes. But every day we want to do more. We continue to want to support the next generation. And that comes back to the founding principles. Andrew drives us every day because he understands the benefits that our support can bring to a young family, a young athlete who's considering the US pathway.
Great stuff. And US college sport, for those that might not be familiar, obviously there's lots of programs now you can watch on Netflix and Amazon, getting a bit more of an insight into college sport in the States. Tell us about some of those numbers, Stuart, and the scale and just the size of college sport in America.
Yeah, Ross, it's quite a bizarre concept when you ask any American, family that you talk to, which team do they follow and who do they support. They typically talk about a college team before a professional team, which is quite an alien concept. College sport in the US is big business. You think about some of the numbers. The college football TV contract being worth over $7.8 billion US over the next 6 years. Think about some of the biggest stadiums in the world you will find on US college campuses. So think about TV rights, think about ticket sales, think about a kit deal with Nike that UCLA has that's worth millions of dollars over the next 5 or 6 years. All of that money helps to generate the opportunity again for the next generation. That money is then reinvested in things like scholarship funding, coaching staff, sports nutritionists, sports scientists. As I say, the best training and best playing environment you could ever imagine. Although I played professionally, I would say that I trained on some pretty amateur facilities compared to what I see when I'm in the US. When I'm on a college campus, I was at UConn recently, and I was just completely blown away again with the facilities that are available across maybe 10 or 12 different sports that the university provides. So incredible. Again, infrastructure that's made possible because of the investment that is made, because that money is reinvested by the university to support the next generation of athletes. So it really is big business. It's quite difficult to picture unless you've been on a college campus just how big the campus is, and those world-class facilities will really blow your mind. And again, it's about how those opportunities to be in those facilities on a day-to-day basis. How can that elevate your performance on the field, but also from an academic perspective, you've got a world-class learning environment as well, which is unique to the US for sure.
Yeah, and you've obviously visited quite a number of different facilities. You mentioned Yukon there, specifically on soccer. Then, Stuart, what would you say is the most impressive facility you've seen on your travels in the States?
It's a difficult one because the facilities are really special. I was out at Penn State recently, and they're going through a bit of an upgrade. Millions of dollars being spent to really enhance the stadium, which is in the shadow of the American football stadium, which holds I think 110,000 fans. Again, across the lot, you've got the ice hockey arena and the basketball stadium. So quite incredible when you see that. But Penn State pretty special. Yukon was really off the charts for me recently, and again I was at Brown University, and wonderful facilities. But I think the key thing to think about is that in the US they never stand still, so these facilities are continuing to develop and grow. The investment continues to kind of pour in, and there's really no stone left unturned in terms of the investment into those athletic facilities. And that's the exciting thing, that the chance to train and play in these world-class environments. I think about myself, Ross, how might that have helped my development in a kind of period of my life where I was looking to really push on in my career, being exposed to those facilities. What might that have done for me? And I get excited any time I visit these campuses, because I always feel as if I've missed out a little bit because I didn't experience it myself. It's that good.
Yeah, I think that's across the board. With a webinar yesterday with one of our colleagues who played at Barry University in Miami, and that's where the Chelsea team actually trained during the recent Club World Cup. So for a club like Chelsea to choose to train at a student athlete campus kind of says all you need to know about the quality. And obviously, when you're over there, Stuart, you're speaking to college coaches as well, and I think that's something FirstPoint prides itself on. Is just that vast network and quality of network of college coaches. Can you just tell the audience a little bit about how we develop and nurture those relationships, and why that is so important when it comes to an athlete working with FirstPoint when it on that recruitment process?
Yeah, I think the network that we have here is now well established. As you highlighted, about 24 years old now in terms of our experience in this space. So we've developed that network. But my team on a day-to-day basis are covering the hard yards, trying to find talent around the world. I think college coaches appreciate that, because they're not able to perhaps travel as often as our team does. And what we're trying to do is kind of grow the reach that those universities have internationally, because we are finding talent. And we become a trusted source. So when we look at an athlete, we make sure that before we present them to a coach, we understand, their athletic level, we understand positional needs that the coach has, and we're creating solutions not just for our clients or athletes in terms of where we're going to place them, but we're also creating solutions for the coaches. So we become a trusted source. What's very difficult, Ross, if I'm a college coach, is if I'm receiving maybe 100 emails a day from athletes who are keen to join my program. First of all, I'm not going to have enough time to look at all of those athletes. The majority of them might not be suitable for my program, and it's difficult for me to give them my time. The difference is when FirstPoint reach out to me as a coach, FirstPoint has taken the time to understand the athlete, not just from an athletic perspective, but also from an academic perspective, so that they're eligible to compete and to also attend the university. So we've done all of the background work there. And when FirstPoint reaches out to the coach knows that we've done our homework on the player, and this is a live candidate for them to consider. So not only do we simplify the process for our clients, but we also simplify the process for our network of college coaches. So again, we've been a leader here for 24 years. When we do reach out to a coach, or our staff do, we'll get a response. It doesn't always mean that the athlete is going to be placed at that particular program, but we are providing qualified candidates. We are doing the hard yards. We are a trusted source of talent internationally, and that simplifies the process, not just for our athletes, but also for the coaches. And I guess that's why the relationships are so strong. And as we continue to invest in staff, we touched on earlier on, staff who've been college coaches or athletes themselves, we continue to build that network that the business has, but also our staff have, as individuals within that. So, FirstPoint is that trusted source, and it's where we can offer solutions to the coaches and to our athletes for sure.
And we've seen some great examples of that in action with recent placements and commitments from some of the athletes that you've worked with who are now over there in the States or heading out next summer. Can you give us a couple of different examples, both from male and female soccer, of where some of our athletes are going or headed.
Yeah, so obviously working with national level players or academy level players here in the UK, as you can imagine, there's a lot of demand for that type of profile of athlete. So thinking about Elke Boyer, who was in Tottenham's academy, who progressed into playing first team. I think she went on loan at Ipswich. She started just this fall at the University of Kentucky. An incredible campus, probably one of the best soccer facilities I've ever had the fortune to kind of visit and to see. She again is someone who was playing at an elite level, and was in high demand when my colleagues Kirsten and Susan then kind of put her through her kind of promotional phase. We've probably got lots of examples. I'm thinking about Catherine Hill, again, someone who has used their time in the US, Ross, to so she was at Old Dominion in Virginia. She went across there. She's come back better prepared to become a professional. That was her dream, and she now plays for Rangers here in Scotland. I think she's the captain. She's also been sort of picked for the national team recently. Others that stick out, I'm going back a little bit in time. Liam Doyle from the Isle of Man would be one that sticks out. Liam was someone that we brought on board, and he initially went out to Herkimer Junior College for 2 years, and then he was drafted by Ohio State. Sorry, he transferred to Ohio State, one of the powerhouses. He was there for 2 years, and then he was drafted into the MLS with LA Galaxy, and he's now, I think, one of the heads of sort of football operations at Nashville, who are a partner of FirstPoint. So, examples of pathways that college can really be that springboard. If the professional pathway is of interest to you, the chance to develop and grow over those 4 years between sort of 18 and 22, can help become that kind of springboard into professional soccer after graduation. So we've probably got lots of examples. Lad from Cambridge United who I visited, I was on campus up at Dartmouth just a couple of weeks ago. When we're in the US, it's always important to us to go and check in on our athletes. And Daniel Carey-Evans, who I signed a couple of years ago from Cambridge United, Daniel, we placed over the summer, and he started at Dartmouth College in Hanover in New Hampshire. He's having a fantastic time, an Ivy League program. The facilities, the experience, the environment for Daniel is kind of off the charts. And we're really looking forward, as we always do, to kind of follow in Daniel's journey and Elke's journey, because we always like to celebrate success and follow, when you're a FirstPoint athlete, we want to see where that, where that kind of that experience and that journey takes you. So, important to us to kind of do that, and we like to share in their success kind of going forward.
Yeah, some good examples there, and there's lots of different examples on our website. We have sort of a feature on success stories, celebrating, as Stuart said, where our athletes are now, what career they've gone into, and also on our social media channels, where we will showcase some of our athlete successes who are currently playing, interviews with athletes as well. So if you want to find out where some of our athletes have gone, then head across to probably our Instagram page and our website. One of the most frequently asked questions, Stuart, I guess, that we get is what does being a student athlete actually look like, and what does a typical day entail? Can you just talk us through, from the knowledge that you've gleaned from the players that we've worked with, what it would actually look like? We've also got that balance between playing and training and studying as well. So could you take us through what a typical day would be?
Yeah, so it's a very full-on, pathway we're talking about. The idea of being a full-time student and a full-time athlete at the same time. So typically our student athletes will be out of bed early in the morning. They will have those early morning gym sessions. They'll have an opportunity to have a little bit of breakfast. They'll be in class, a little bit of lunch. They'll have a team meeting typically, about a team practice. Again, a little bit of time for dinner. Again, they'll then be in study hall, which is unique to student athletes, an environment for them to go and to study, to get a little bit of additional support if that's required from tutors. But it's a very full-on experience, full-time student, full-time athlete. In amongst that busy day, you're going to be potentially travelling. You could be 4 or 5 hours on an aeroplane to play your nearest rivals. But you will have your laptop with you. You may have a tutor on the flight or on the bus with you. It's important to highlight that if I was the best player on the team, but I didn't turn up at class, I didn't maintain my studies, and I couldn't maintain my GPA, a grade point average, I would lose my eligibility to compete. So it's important, student athlete, student first. I have to make sure I can keep up my side of the bargain, which is I'm working hard in class. I'm attending class, my assignments are in on time. Even though I'm allowed to miss class when I'm traveling with the team, I still have to have my assignments in time. I have to keep up with my studies. But it's a very supportive environment. Again, if you think about the idea of a college campus, I'm never too far away from where I sleep, where I eat, where I train, where I study, and it's all self-contained. So it's a very, very busy, full-on experience, but there's a huge amount of support that's available to student athletes, not just from the coaching staff and the athletic department, but also, from an academic perspective. There's advisors, there's tutors, there's a lot of support, because it's in everyone's interest that you have a fantastic time, fantastic 4 years, successful on the field, but also successful off the field and in the classroom. So it's a full-on experience. We're very honest about that. It's not about going across to the US for a bit of a holiday. And again, within the various levels, within the kind of divisions within the NCAA, for example, again, that experience might be slightly different in terms of the intensity of my athletic requirements alongside my academic requirements. So it's about trying to find the kind of best fit for you and the right environment. That's important to us. And again, I should just come back a little stage. We maybe highlighted there, players that are playing at an elite academy, kind of level that we've placed recently. But there's a broad range of opportunity. If I'm someone who loves playing, soccer, I'm playing at a county level or a community level, and I want to have that full-time athlete experience, training and playing like a professional, retaining myself in sport for another 4 years whilst I'm studying, there is absolutely a place for me. There are different levels. There's a broad range. If you look at male soccer, around 1,400 programs, and female around 1,500. So broad range of opportunity. So whether I'm an elite international player as a young player, or I'm someone who really enjoys my football in a semi-recreational way, and everything in between, there are different pathways. But it is a full-on experience, and it's something that my staff at the kind of front end, as we're going through an assessment of you, we'll try and explain that to you, because you need to understand what a day in the life will look like, but also what the expectations are on you if you're in receipt of scholarship, and how busy your day is going to be.
Yeah, I think we often describe it as the best of both worlds, obviously having that full-time professional playing status, but also you're a full-time student, so you've got that backup degree, but that does add extra demands, and keeping up with your classwork is absolutely key. But as Stuart alluded to, there's lots of support, particularly for international student athletes. I think internationals, there's different staff involved at the university to help you out as well. And obviously from the playing side, you've got strength and conditioning coaches and a huge or a big network of staff behind you as well. So whilst it is demanding, there is absolutely lots of support for you. And we talk about scholarships, Stuart, a lot. So again, for those who might not be familiar, can you just tell us what a scholarship entails? There's clearly two different types of scholarship. We've got a full scholarship, the kind of ultimate aim, and we've got partial scholarship. So what are the differences, and what does the scholarship fund cover?
Yeah, so if I was an athlete who was fortunate to receive a full scholarship, essentially the university would cover all of my costs for tuition, accommodation on campus, food on campus, any books related to my area of study, and any sports equipment as a soccer player. So if the university, insurance would also be in there. And if all of that was covered by the university, we would call that a full scholarship. But it's not possible for every athlete to receive a full scholarship. Only a kind of small percentage, will typically start as a freshman athlete on a full scholarship. Even with the best work at FirstPoint, we're always very transparent about that. It's important to highlight that scholarship funding is a fantastic opportunity, but what's most common is that athletes will start on what we call a partial scholarship, which means the university is going to provide funding that's going to cover some, but not all of those costs. So think about all of those costs and thinking about scholarship reducing those costs, but there's a bit of a gap that's going to be left over. And that gap is what's passed on to the athlete and their family to make a contribution to the cost in each of the 4 years. Now, the beauty of scholarship funding is that as I become a more senior player within the team, my scholarship funding can grow with me. So as an incentive for me, being at practice on time, contributing to the team on the field of play, keeping up with my studies, overall contribution to the university, my scholarship fund can grow, which means the university invests more in me, and my parents are not tasked with paying as much as we move into years 2, 3, and 4. Now, in addition to the coach having a budget, which is what we call athletic scholarship funding, if I've done well at school, if I've got strong grades, have maybe got a strong SAT score, which is the college entry exam, the university can also look at a separate pot of money, and we call that academic scholarship funding. And that's something that, again, can be stacked with what the coach can provide. And again, those two sums of money, we're trying to really shrink the cost to as little as we can. It's of course, it's important to us to understand any athletes, kind of budget and in terms of the kind of contributions they can make. And of course, that will help us tailor that outreach and that kind of promotion to make sure that we are trying to find the best fit for them based on their athletic level, their academic level, their financial and social needs. These are the kind of 4 key markers that our staff would be working on. So scholarship is a fantastic opportunity to kind of reduce the true cost and potentially making it more affordable or less expensive to study in the US versus staying at home and studying in your own country. So fantastic opportunity that scholarship presents. Again, it's important to highlight that the majority of athletes will receive a partial scholarship. We do place, I mentioned Elke earlier on, we placed a couple of athletes at Kentucky last year. One was on a full scholarship, one was on a partial. There were 2 players of comparable levels, but Elke was able to tap into a little bit more through the funding that her coach was able to provide. So important we prepare you for true costs, and that's something that my team are always doing, setting expectations. But scholarship, as I say, is a fantastic opportunity to reduce the cost of gaining a degree, whilst having that broader experience and the opportunity to be a full-time student athlete.
Thanks for that detailed explanation, Stuart. And as I said at the start, if anybody does have any questions that they want to ask myself or Stuart, please fire them into the chat box, and we'll cover those in the end. At the end, whether that's around the scholarships or some of the different topics we're chatting through. And you talked about the different playing levels. Then, Stuart, there's 3 different playing or governing bodies within college sport in the US. You've got NCAA, NAIA, and the junior colleges that fall into NJCAA. Can you maybe just tell us about the different playing levels? You've obviously got the playing side and the academic side of that, and how that works between those different levels.
Yeah, it can be quite confusing. Important to highlight, the NCAA does have 3 divisions, 1, 2, and 3, and that doesn't reflect on the quality of the university or the education. It's about the athletic competition that those universities participate in. If you think about Division 1, probably renowned for being the kind of fiercest, kind of level of competition. So when I'm not in class, it's going to be a really full on, maybe slightly pressure-filled experience from from an athletic perspective. I'm going to have to be training all the time, full on that athletic side, with a high level of study alongside that. So quite an intense experience as a D1 athlete. In Division 2, think a bit more of a kind of balance, strong on the athletic side, strong on the academic side, maybe a bit of a balance in a kind of D2 from a D2 perspective. Then if you look at Division 3, there's more of a focus that shifts towards the kind of academics, and you may see maybe a slightly more rounded approach to your 4 years. High level of competition on the field, but that more time to study, more time to be really dialing in on your academic progress. What's really confusing with all of this is that there'll be the kind of top teams in Division 3 and Division 2 and Division 1 would all be potentially comparable in terms of their, if they had a game against each other, it would be a pretty close game. There's no promotion and no relegation. But again, probably the example that I use when I think about Divisions 1, 2, and 3 is that Harvard is Division 1, and just down the road MIT is Division 3, and the kind of smartest people in the world will attend these universities. So it's not about the quality of the education; it's about where the universities choose to be. It could be to do with the number of programs that they run, but as I say, our job is to try and find the right fit for you based on who you are. If a coach is expecting me, I'll use Dartmouth as an example. I was a centre back. I'm barely 6 foot tall. Dartmouth, don't recruit centre backs under 6'3", 6'4". If I've got my heart set on playing at Dartmouth, it's probably not going to be the right fit for me. And I would hope the organisation that were looking after me would give me that information, but they would talk to the coaches who would want to recruit a 6 foot tall centre back versus a 6'4" centre back. So we kind of have to get that right and try and find the right fit. You mentioned the NAIA. So again, the NAIA is a different governing body. Eligibility is slightly different. So when we think about the NCAA, we have to understand what is your GPA, what does your athletic background look like? Are you eligible to compete within the NCAA? The NAIA is slightly different in terms of the rules, the GPA requirements. So think about maybe smaller, more private universities, a slightly different approach in terms of, look and feel to being a student athlete within the NAIA. Probably similar to a kind of D3 in terms of the size of the campus. And then you mentioned the NJCAA. NJCAA maybe somewhere that I would want to start, junior college. Maybe if I'm a little bit behind in my studies, maybe I've not enjoyed my time in school, maybe my grades are a little bit lower than I would wish to have. There's an opportunity for me to go to junior college to do an associate's degree for 2 years and use that as a springboard to then move on and then finish my degree in years 3 and 4. The Liam Doyle example, I think I gave earlier on with him going from Herkimer to Ohio State. He took that particular pathway. Again, the really exciting thing is, from an athletic perspective, if I'm maybe not quite at the level at age 18 to get drafted or to be sort of recruited into a kind of D1 program, if I start in junior college and do well for those 2 years, there is that chance to put myself in the kind of shop window and then potentially be recruited by one of those bigger programs who wouldn't have taken me as a first year, a freshman athlete, but as a third year, more experienced, more physically developed, there's an opportunity for me to kind of step on. So junior college can serve a couple of different purposes from an athletic and an academic perspective.
Great, thanks for that, Stuart, again. And just talking about the kind of full process and service that FirstPoint offer a student athlete, obviously we've talked that we offer a very comprehensive service to help you through the full journey if there's something that you wanted to pursue. Can you just maybe summarize the different steps within that process of how FirstPoint would support an athlete and their family throughout the recruitment process and beyond?
Yeah, absolutely. And everything we do is high touch from the moment you reach out to us or the moment you come along to one of our events. The kind of first phase is about that athletic and academic assessment. So will you maybe send some highlights or game footage? Someone within my team will assess that in terms of your athletic suitability. Or if you've come along to one of our in-person trial events, our team will be assessing you on the day in terms of that potential. The kind of next phase is to then meet with you, typically on a Teams call or potentially on a one-to-one meeting with you and your family in person. There it's learning more about you from your academic timeline, where your grades are at, and trying to really assess your athletic potential and your academic potential. So understanding what club you're playing at, as I say, what grades you've or what subjects you've taken, what grades you've achieved, what's your kind of pathway over the next couple of years. So a full-on experience in terms of that assessment, we have to make sure we get that right. If we think that we're an organisation that can help you to achieve your goals in terms of your progress to the US, we would potentially offer you a place on the programme here at FirstPoint. And at that point, if you decide to take up that offer, an opportunity, really that's when our service starts. From a recruitment perspective, we've got a department, our college placement department, and begin working with you initially to build out your athletic and academic profile, supporting you with things like preparation for the SAT exam, building that vision of you that's then ready to take out to that network, that FirstPoint network, where you'll have a dedicated college placement consultant who's doing that outreach to those coaches, starting to generate interest in you, starting to generate conversations for you with coaches, trying to create as many options for you as we can. Of course, timing is important to that. The more time we have to work with you, the more time we have to prepare your profile, the more time we have, we can put you into that promotional phase. And, typically it follows more time, means that we can create more placement opportunities. It will probably make sense that when a coach has recruited a player in my position, I've missed out on the opportunity to join that program. So we want to get the kind of timing right to make sure, we can create these life-changing opportunities. But it's high touch, it's managed. Again, when you get to the point of making a decision, our staff are with you to make sure that we're giving you good advice on the program that you pick, the university you choose, helping you with the admissions process. We're then helping you with the physical act of going. You'll be on a student visa. How do you navigate that process? again, our staff are walking you through all aspects of that journey. And again, something that's really important to us, I touched on being in the US recently and visiting some of our athletes. We don't forget about our athletes. As an NCAA certified agency, we're mandated to provide pastoral support. So when you're in the US, if you've got any challenges or your parents are concerned about you, you would always pick up the phone to FirstPoint, and we can listen to your concerns, and we can react based on anything that we might need to get involved with, speaking to the coach, speaking to the athletic director, speaking to the university. In most instances, it will just be about putting your mind at ease. But it's important for you that when your son or daughter is in the US, you've got an organisation that's here to support you should that ever be required. So it's a comprehensive service from the minute that you come through to my team, all the way through, right through to graduation, where we're provided support. So it's a comprehensive, high-touch service that we provide here at FirstPoint.
And you mentioned timeline there, Stuart. What would be a recommended timeline if a player wanted to start the process now? How long might that take, or what would our recommendation be?
Yeah, so we as I mentioned, more time is good time. So typically anywhere between sort of 2 and 3 years would be preferable. Even if you think about the kind of time it might take to kind of prepare and sit the SAT test a couple of times, that could be 12 months in itself. But what we have to do is always react to the timeline that we have. So if a young athlete presents to us 6 months out from wanting to start, again, we have to do the best to create opportunities with the timeline that we have. But certainly having a couple of years working with our staff is always preferable. Again, getting that profile right, making sure we've got all your grade transcripts in, making sure that you're preparing for the SAT and taking it a couple of times. Again, that can increase your admissibility. It can increase your chances of tapping into academic scholarship funding. We don't want any of that to be in a rush. It also allows you to go through a bit of a process of developing and understanding what's ahead. We have a lot of educational webinars and seminars that run right throughout the year. We have college coaching clinics. It's a bit of a journey, and I think it's important to give yourself time, as a family on that journey. But of course, we will meet people over the next couple of months, young athletes who might want to start in August, next year in fall 2026, and we will do everything we can to support them. The likelihood is, the athletes we've been working with for maybe 12 months, 18 months prior to that will have been through the process with a little bit more time and potentially have had more opportunities to consider and potentially have tapped into more scholarship funding along the way. So more time is always good time, to be going through this process.
So if you are on the call and you want to head out next August or next fall, it'd be important to kickstart that process as soon as possible. Obviously, for younger athletes who do have a little bit more time, the more time we have with you, Stuart said, the better. Next question is around a fairly new concept called name, image, and likeness and NIL. So this is a new piece of legislation that was passed in 2021 that allowed athletes to start earning money through things like sponsorship and what have you. Can you just explain again to the audience, Stuart, how NIL works and what sort of opportunities that might create for someone to earn a little bit of income whilst they're a student athlete in the States?
Yeah, absolutely. Earlier on we touched on, how big college sport is in terms of the vast sums of money that it helps to generate. And as you highlighted, Ross, up until 2021, if I was a student athlete, I was not able to, to earn anything whilst I was in college. Even though it was maybe me that was helping to, sell out the stadium based on my performances. Maybe it was, someone else within the athletic department, other teams helping to fill those American football stadiums. Vast sums of money, TV rights, none of that money was ever finding its way to the student athletes. They weren't allowed to earn. That changed, and now, athletes, probably Olivia Dunn's probably the most famous. She's a gymnast at LSU. She's been able to monetize her brand over her 4 years in college. So thinking about being a brand ambassador, personal appearances, kit deals and sponsorship and endorsements. I believe for Olivia, she may have she might tweet out, or she might have a TikTok video that, someone will pay her hundreds of thousands of dollars, just to give her opinion, perhaps on, current trends or a clothing line, or as it could be Nike or Adidas. So lots of opportunities now for college athletes. And it's not all about, making, millions of dollars, but student athletes, are stars. They're held in high regard. So whether you're a local business or another organisation working locally, they want to know you. They want to maybe have you coming along wearing your tracksuit, maybe opening up their restaurant or just being visible and taking part in a launch day. So opportunities, also coaching opportunities to potentially to sign autographs or to help represent the university. And indeed, some universities now, if you can imagine a situation where 10 universities were all vying for my signature, there's now an opportunity for those universities to say, well, as well as signing with our program and giving you a full scholarship, Stuart, we're also going to give you $500,000 each year to be an ambassador for Penn State or UCLA. So it's becoming another way to attract athletes. Is because there's an opportunity for them to earn whilst they're at that particular program. So we talk about all the time, there's never been a better time to consider being a college athlete, because there are lots of things. Again, if you're, can spin off from there. Again, if you're active on social media, again, there's an opportunity to really, to kind of monetize that. And obviously at FirstPoint, we're doing a lot to kind of pioneer that. Looking after our own athletes, and we've got a number, Ross, who are on obviously NIL deals representing FirstPoint and being ambassadors for the college pathway through FirstPoint.
Absolutely, and we do offer support on that front, as Stuart said, becoming an NIL ambassador for FirstPoint. And what we would encourage you to do, if that's something of interest, is to kind of treat your social media channels seriously. See yourself as a professional athlete in your own right, and start to professionalize some of your the content that you put out. So things like showing videos of your goals, showing a day in the life of you training, for example, or playing a match. All those things contribute to brands being attracted to you. And the more you can build your following, the more attractive you can be. So going back to the start of the process then, if I am interested in becoming a US soccer scholar athlete, what do I do? What would be the next steps for me? I know we run trials, obviously, in certain countries, but there's also the opportunity to build your athlete profile and put footage on your profile. Just talk to the audience, Stuart, about how you would go about that.
Yeah, absolutely, Ross. So if you are close to one of our trial venues, we have on our website, they are listed, and we'll have a kind of monthly cycle in the UK and also internationally. And we'll tend to run them in soccer and in rugby, and also in field hockey. If you are perhaps somewhere else in the world and coming along to one of our events isn't possible, or if you have something like VOCam footage or huddle cam footage or some highlights, these are things that you can then sign up to your FirstPoint profile, add in your highlights. You can then reach out to our team, and what we can then do is start to kind of look at a consultation with you. We can assess your athletic suitability based on those highlights, based on those that game footage. Again, always encouraging you to put in your club and any athletic and academic information you can into your FirstPoint profile. It allows us to you're immediately connected with our staff and our team. We can start to build out that support. But it's important to us. We have to be honest about that assessment. We have to make sure that we are, ensuring that you are suitable for this particular pathway. And there's lots of options within that pathway, but it's important that we're honest. If I'm playing at a kind of county level somewhere in the world, yep, there's going to be a place for me to go and have a fantastic 4 years, but it's maybe not in the top 10 program in Division 1 to begin with. I might get there, but I need to understand where I need to start. And there's lots of movement within college, soccer just now. There is the opportunity that if you do well, there's the opportunity to maybe transfer and to maybe join a different or bigger program as you become a more, kind of more senior athlete. But definitely the first phase is to either to come to one of our events, or it's to kind of reach out to our team, and we can go through that consultation process with you. But our dedicated college recruitment platform allows you to create a free profile and start to build out that information. And our staff can then review your game tape, and we can start to provide support, to you based on age and stage at that point.
Great, and hopefully that's provided an explanation of how the process works, and we have lots of information on our website that you can explore more about that. So we've got one more question for Stuart, which we'll hold till the end, but we'll go to the audience questions first, and a few good questions have come in. So One from Alexander asking, how long does a partial scholarship run? So maybe worth just explaining how the scholarship is offered and over your 4 years at university.
Yeah, so again, typically you would have a review. So you would, if I signed for a particular program and committed to a particular program, and let's say I had a shortfall of $10,000 each year to contribute, or my family did. At the end of that season, the coach would typically sit with me and would, reflect on the year and how that had gone. And there's the opportunity that then that cost reduces, so that my scholarship fund grows as I move into my second year. But what won't happen is my deal, it won't start costing me more. So typically your scholarship is kind of locked in for 4 years, provided you are continuing to keep up your studies, your contribution to the team, your attending practice. As long as I'm doing everything I'm asked, my scholarship would typically be in place for 4 years. However, couple of advantages to there's been a review after year 1, year 2, is that it gives the coach a chance, or the university a chance, to invest more in me. But also, from a safeguarding perspective, if I've gone out to the US and for any reason, I want to transfer to another program after that first year or second year, I can still do that. Or if I'd gone out and I'd been there for a couple of years and I decided, I had to come home for for maybe family reasons, or maybe it hadn't quite worked out for me, I'm not tied in terms of those costs in years, 2, 3, and 4 if I've only been there for a year. So there's a lot of safeguarding built in for our athletes. But again, typically, your scholarship is kind of locked in for 4 years. And that review allows, hopefully, the coach and the program to invest a little bit more in you in each of your 4 years.
Thank you, Stuart. Next question, what is the US providing that other countries don't? So I suppose you've touched upon that just with the facilities. I mean, there's very few examples, certainly here in the UK, where you can be a full-time athlete or full-time soccer player, but also studying for a degree as well. So I would say that for me, that's probably the unique selling point of the US, along with the facilities.
Yeah, I think Canada, is another country. There's a kind of similar environment and opportunity. But I think if you look in a kind of UK context, although I could maybe go to Loughborough or Stirling and I could study full time towards a degree, and I could play maybe in the kind of Bucks League, it's not going to be the same as being a full time athlete alongside. It's maybe almost that kind of club feel alongside my studies. And again, I've mentioned maybe 2 programs there. So, there are many more to choose from in the US, many more that will present more opportunities for me to consider. You're right, Ross, those facilities and, world-class facilities, not just to train on, but also to play on. And the broader experience, I think, is unique to the US. I don't see it being replicated. I know in other countries around the world, I can do a kind of bit of both, but not as a full-time student athlete. And I think that's the unique selling point for the US. And for me, it's if I could turn back time, I would think about giving myself lots of options when I turn 22. Am I going to go into that pro pathway? And if I am, fantastic, but I've got a degree to fall back on. And I think that's the big thing we've touched on, is the chance to really to be a full-time athlete, but also not giving up the full-time educational pathway. And I don't think anywhere does it in terms of the the kind of same size and scale, and the experience is the US is quite unique in that sense.
And you mentioned Canada there. We've got a question from Sophie. Do you work with Canadian universities as well? So again, we have placed athletes in different Canadian universities over the short time that we've both been involved, but over the longer period with FirstPoint. So yeah, Canadian universities, there are some great ones, very, very similar to US in terms of their facilities and campuses, and we do work with Canadian coaches.
Absolutely, Ross. And again, we've actually got a member of staff who studied at Cape Breton University in Nova Scotia, and Jamie was on a kind of professional pathway. He'd had a couple of years out of education. He actually wasn't eligible to compete in the US as it stood. He was eligible to compete in Canada based on his timeline. So sometimes we work with athletes and the opportunity to go to Canada might be because they've maybe ran out of eligibility, or they don't have eligibility to play and study in the US. For others, it's maybe the opportunity to experience something similar to the US, but they want to be in Canada. We've got some fantastic programs we work with on the male and on the female side, and we're always being asked for talent, talented young athletes around the world who would be interested, in Canada as an alternative to the US. So an exciting prospect, to play and study in Canada for sure.
We've also got a broad mix of different nationalities on the webinar today, and people asking about exam qualifications. So obviously we talked about qualifications that you need. How does it work with regards to different international exams, and maybe specifically referring to how we calculate the GPA?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Obviously, for my staff, we have to understand the educational system in that particular country. And then what we will do is we'll look at how that translates from an NCAA eligibility perspective, NAIA and NJCAA. So there are international guides. So if I was in Australia, for example, I would understand, the kind of graduation point. What is the point of graduation in Western Australia, for example? I would need to understand, it's year 12. Whereas in England, for example, it's a GCSE year and it's year 11. And then, I've got a couple of years where I'm going to move on to A levels. In Ireland, again, it's a little bit different. It's about senior certificates. So what we're able to do, or what my team are able to do, is always understand whoever we're talking to, whatever country we are in the world, we have to understand, it's one of the key questions for us, what are you studying? What pathway are you on? Are you on GCSE? Are you on IB? Are you working on a local curriculum? And then what we understand then is how that translates, into the US. And then we can look at subjects and grades, and again, understand GPA. We can start to work that out, grade point average, based on your results, and the subjects you've taken. So it's an important aspect, and it's obviously a complex aspect of the process to navigate yourself. But right from the start, that's part of our assessment. We're understanding, are you eligible? And again, if I was someone who was, really keen to go to an Ivy League university, but I only had modest grades, I would hope someone would explain to me that that's not going to be possible, because I'm not going to get in with a kind of C average. There may be a program for me with a C average, but it's not going to be not going to be at an Ivy League or a very academic institution. So we have to understand all of that and understand where you fit potentially, what your pathway is. And it's all about creating pathways for you here at FirstPoint.
Yeah. A couple more questions before we finish then. How many training sessions are there usually in a week, and what happens when a player is injured?
Yeah, really good. A really commonly asked question. So again, the kind of day in the life, the idea of a kind of training schedule, it will vary. So if you can imagine going across, your first couple of weeks, you're going to be in pre-season, and then the season is going to start really quite quickly. Typically at the start of September. And you can have 2 or 3 games a week. So, of course, the training schedule will be tailored based to on the number of games you're playing and the travel within that week. But yeah, again, typically there'll be sort of 4 or 5 sessions within the week, and again that may increase based on the time of year. In the spring, there is obviously more time with less travel, with less of an intensive game structure, for more time in the gym, more time with the sports science department. So the year will be quite different. So think about quite an intense period of play, but obviously you have to taper training. But when you're not in that kind of game time, you will be training every day. You'll obviously have rest days at the appropriate time. You're working with an elite development team in terms of pathway, so it's important. Rest is as important as training sometimes. So all of that is monitored throughout the year. But certainly, looking at sort of September through to December is going to be very intense. Travel 2 or 3 games a week, training at the appropriate times. And amongst that, when you go back in January, again, more time to train, daily training sessions. One of the things that you'll notice if you watch any videos online, college athletes are strong. There's a big emphasis on being in the gym. We talk about the athletes lifting. There's a strength and conditioning aspect to that will certainly kick in what is known as a kind of elongated pre-season, sort of January through to May. You'll still be playing games, maybe less travel, but it's a pretty intense, training environment. But of course, it's done within a structure to make sure that athletes are able to perform, not getting injured, and training and resting at the appropriate times.
Thanks, Stuart, and yeah, thanks everyone for putting their questions forward, and hopefully we've covered most of them that we can within there. So that's us pretty much at the end. So really to sum up, Stuart, if I'm a prospective aspiring college player at the moment, maybe 16, 17 years old, what would be the kind of best piece of advice you could give someone at the start of the process, and how can they get involved, or how can they approach the start of the recruitment pathway?
Yeah, so my best piece of advice would be to be open about all opportunities that we can potentially create for you. You'll have heard of certain universities in the US, those kind of big ticket universities, but there are so many more that you won't have heard of. There are so many more that may be the right fit for you. I visited 5 campuses a couple of weeks ago, and they were all different. The one that probably would have suited me the most was the one that was a little bit out of the way in the country, smaller campus. It would have been a better fit for me than the campus in the centre of a city, maybe too much going on. So if I was very narrow in my focus, thinking, well, I only want to play at Brown, for example, there's maybe too much going on there for me. Maybe 30 minutes down the road, slightly smaller campus, maybe more personalised experience would have been a better fit for me based on who I am. So I would always encourage you to be really open and to maybe try and explore when there's opportunities to talk to a coach. We would always encourage you to talk to them, learn a little bit more about the programme, and don't have a fixed mindset. Be really open, and there'll be lots of opportunities. In terms of coming to FirstPoint, this is a complex experience, and it's a complex process to go through. My mum and dad were not professional soccer players. There was a point that they could take me to, and then they got me a professional sports agent to take me through, aspects of my career that they couldn't support me on. And it's the same kind of advice here at FirstPoint. Unless your mum and dad have been through this themselves, it's going to be quite difficult. And even if they have, to kind of navigate, the kind of current trends, what recruitment looks like today. We've got a team of experts here to alleviate that burden. It allows you to focus on school, allows you to focus on your club play, and you've got a team of experts here who will guide you every step of the way. So alleviate all of that burden and stress. Really try and find, the right opportunities for you. We often talk to athletes who said that they had a fantastic time, but they wish they'd worked with an organisation to maybe really broaden their opportunity. They studied in the US and it was fantastic, but they recognised that if they'd maybe had a little bit more support, there may have been something better out there for them. So definitely get in touch. Different ways to do that, but we're here and accessible. Obviously, creating a free profile is a great starting point. Maybe coming along to an event is another opportunity. But if you reach out to FirstPoint, we'll pick things up, and we're here to help you every step of the way.
Great advice, Stuart. So yeah, that's pretty much covered the main questions that we were keen to talk through today, and very much appreciate Stuart and his time and his insight into hopefully helping you get a better understanding of what becoming a college soccer student athlete is all about in the United States. Some great examples of athletes that we've worked with, some examples of some of the universities and colleges that we've worked with, the different playing levels, and how being a student athlete is structured with that kind of full-on best of both worlds experience as we talked about. So really appreciate everybody coming along and joining the webinar today. Hopefully that's helped inform you a little bit more. As Stuart said, we're here to help. So if you are interested in pursuing this further, please feel free to reach out. We'll be sending a recording of the webinar just in case you missed any of it. I know we had a few people joining slightly late, so that will be available to you very soon. We'll include some of our contact details within that, and maybe a couple of examples of some of those athletes that we've talked about, just to give you a little bit more insight into life as a student athlete. So thanks for joining. We shall hopefully see you soon. We've got lots of different webinars, as Stuart said, coming up. So check out our website in the resources section to see what other webinars might help educate you that little bit further. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon.